My name is Ethan Parks. My project is Tower Defense. Tower Defense is a game where enemies enter the screen on one side, follow a path, and exit the screen on the other side. The players must place towers along the path to defeat the enemies before they exit the screen. As an example use case, I will show the player placing and upgrading towers. This tower has the base projectile, which only does damage to the enemy. We can upgrade the tower to have a slowing effect. And we can upgrade the tower to have an area of effect explosion. You can see here that the enemies are both slowed and the nearby enemies take damage. The design patterns I would like to highlight are prototype and decorator. The towers clone a prototype projectile each time they fire. I chose this because it was an intuitive way to store the type of projectile the tower should shoot, rather than storing flags for each different decorator to be applied to the projectiles, or use a factory that would have to be able to create projectiles with all possible combinations of decorators. Here is the UML diagram for the prototype design pattern. The classes used are client, abstract prototype, and concrete prototype. In my implementation, the client role is played by the tower class, the abstract prototype is the projectile class, the plane projectile, slow projectile, and area of effect explode projectile play the role of the concrete prototype. The role of the abstract projectile decorator will be discussed with the decorator design pattern. The projectiles use the decorator design pattern to augment their effects when exploding. I chose this because it was an easy way to separate projectile functionality into separate classes, as well as allowing me to only define the update location function in the abstract projectile file and make it available to all of the projectile decorators. Each decorator implements its own explode method to be called when the projectile reaches the target. Here is the UML diagram for the decorator design pattern. The classes involved are the abstract component, the concrete component, the abstract decorator, and the concrete decorator. In my implementation, the projectile class plays the role of the abstract component, the plane projectile plays the role of the concrete component, the projectile decorator class plays the role of the abstract decorator, and the slow projectile and area of effect explode projectile play the role of the concrete decorator. To use the prototype and decorator patterns together, I had to add a clone method to the projectile decorator, which returns a clone of itself and passes in a clone of the projectile it is decorating. An example can be seen in the slowing projectile class. The clone method within the slowing projectile class returns a new slowing projectile and a clone of the projectile it was decorating. This process continues until the projectile being decorated is a plane projectile, in which case a plane projectile is returned and no more cloning takes place. The decorator design pattern also made undoing tower upgrade simple. As seen here, to undo, we simply set the tower's projectile to the projectile inside the outermost decorator. This removes the last decorator applied to the projectile.